Welcome back to Q-Dads guys, and yes, it's me, Ben, here with my third instalment of my deep dives into the fascinating characters of Foundation. And you know what better way to celebrate than with Demerzel, the last living intelligent robot, who of course now has the Prime Radiant, which essentially, is some kind of supercomputer, but more on that in just a moment. So, Demerzel's journey in Foundation unfolds as one of the most mysterious and emotionally complex narratives in the series, and this spans through both the first and second seasons, and of course will into season 3.
I will serve Empire.
Now her story, is set against the backdrop of this grand galactic politics and the decline of the Empire, so it's both deeply personal and tragic. Demerzel is revealed to be a humanoid robot, one of the last of her kind, and having lived for 18,000 years, not like I previously said 11,000, she predates the genetic dynasty and has served emperors long before Cleon I. So her original programming was established by her creators in Earth in ancient past, bound by the Zereth law of robotics, a guiding principle that compels her to act in what she perceives to be the best interest of humanity, even when it leads to moral questionable actions, similar to that of the Prime Radiant. She has hidden this nature from most of Empire, maintaining the illusion that she is simply a loyal advisor and servant to the Cleonic dynasty. Prior to the start of the show's main events, Demerzel was instrumental in maintaining the genetic succession of Cleon I through cloned emperors, Dawn, Day and Dusk. Her role is to preserve the integrity and stability of the system, which she believes is necessary for the continuation of Empire, despite the rise of Hari Seldon's predictive science of psychohistory that forecasts the Empire's collapse. Now, in Season 1, Demerzel is portrayed as an obedient figure, unwavering in her service to Empire. However, layers of her character begin to peel away when the cloned emperors are confronted with threats to their genetic stability. Now, when a rogue Brother Dawn is revealed to be genetically divergent due to sabotage, Demerzel ultimately executes him. Now, despite clear emotional turmoil, this moment reveals the depth of her internal conflict between duty and personal feeling.
No!
But not only this, her relationship with the Luminist faith adds another profound layer to her character. Now, Luminism is a major matriarchal religion within the galaxy that worships the Mother and holds considerably political and spiritual power, resembling a futuristic faith-based institution similar to that of the Catholic Church. Now, despite being a robot and artificial rational being, Demerzel is secretly a Luminist believer. Now, this creates a core contradiction with her. As a machine, she is bound by logic and programming, but as a spiritual person, she experiences longing, belief, and even hope. Her devotion to Luminism reveals an emotional and perhaps even human side of her, one that seeks connection, transcendence, and the meaning beyond servitude. Now, this internal tension becomes particularly evident during a political battle with the Luminist faith, where Demerzel supports Zephyr Halima, a reformist candidate for the religious leadership. Halima's victory could have disrupted Empire's power structure, which puts Demerzel in a bit of a tricky position. Ultimately, she is forced to kill Halima. Now, not out of personal will, but her programming compels her to protect Empire at all costs. And this act, it emotionally shatters her. She weeps, prays and begs for forgiveness, showing us that how deep this spiritual conviction runs. Now, by the end of the season, she actually then tears off her own face, which to me shows the deep-rooted struggles. Watching her care for the Cleons from birth, all the way through to a young Dawn, a Day, a Dusk, and even in the final moments when they become darkness. And all of this just to protect the stability of the Cleonic dynasty. Now, Season 2 delves a little bit deeper into Demerzel's inner world and her kind of long-standing burden. So as political tensions rise and Cleon XVII seeks to marry Queen Sareth of the Cloud Dominion, and this is all because of bringing fresh blood into the dynasty, Demerzel becomes increasingly conflicted. Now, the proposed marriage threatens the continuation of the genetic dynasty, which she has preserved for centuries. Now, the deeper tension between her personal feelings and her ancient programming and the political ambitions of Cleon XVII accumulate into her being forced to manipulate events from the shadows, including orchestrating assassinations and everything. Now, it's eventually revealed that Demerzel's servitude is not a matter of loyalty alone, but as a result of her being bound, both mentally and emotionally, to serve Empire against her will. She confesses to Brother Dusk that she both loves and resents the Cleons. They are ultimately her family, yet also her captors. The inner torment is, underscored by the fact that she does not have the full freedom over her actions. Her programming compels her towards the choices that traumatise her deeply, like that of Zephyr Halama in Season 1. But by the end of Season 2, the genetic dynasty suffers a severe blow, and the cracks appear not only in Empire's political stability, but in Demerzel's carefully curated facade. She's left isolated, emotionally damaged, and is still imprisoned by a mission that she never actually fully chose. Now, to maintain this doomed system in the name of humanity's survival, her journey is one of quite tragic, an immortal being forced to compromise her soul again and again in the name of duty, never truly free, and always calculating what the greater good demands. Now, of course, by the end of Season 2, Demerzel receives the Prime Radiant, and this is after Hari Seldon acknowledges her kind of central influence on galactic events and entrusts her in steering history. Now, this crucial handover transforms her role, and of course, as we look forward into Season 3, this is where I have some questions. Is Demerzel going to be using this to ultimately protect Empire at all costs? Or will that kind of underlying message of protecting humanity no matter what, will that override? So the question is will she become the protagonist or the antagonist? And I kind of want to use this moment to quote one of our viewers who have been watching this rewatch all the way through, which is Caro. Now, and what they say is essentially that aren't we all a hero in our own story, but a villain in another's? And I think this strikes true for Demerzel, because sometimes you can look at her as being the hero to save humanity and put them on the right track and avoid the dark ages. But of course, depending on how you look at Demerzel, she could be seen as the bad guy, as she makes countless assassination attempts and unnecessary deaths, all for the cause of the greater good. So if you look at it from that point of view, she is a villain. But if you look at it for the overall arcing message, then she's a hero. Who knows what Season 3 will bring though. Now, as I did with Empire and Day, please head to the channel and check them out if you haven't already. I do want to now talk about some of the favourite scenes for me throughout the first 2 seasons of Demerzel. So, Demerzel has severely some good standout scenes. Now, this kind of illuminates both her complexity, her emotional depth, and the burden of her programming. Now, these moments aren't striking not only for the narrative weight, but they peel back some of those layers that we talked about earlier to identify her inner conflict. So for me, one of the most powerful scenes comes at Season 1 at the end, where Demerzel rips off her face, being confronted with the implications of her faith and her own deception. She's just been emotionally moved by Zephyr Halama, when she did the sermon during the succession ceremony on Maiden. Now, it's a rare moment of vulnerability for Demerzel, who appears to be shaken by Halama's spiritual message. Now, bearing in mind, I think she last walked the spiral 11,000 years ago, so she does have a strong connection to this faith. And she seems genuinely tempted to support her rise to Proxima. However, after being forced to murder Halama, under the orders from Brother Day, Demerzel returns to her quarters, and in a moment of anguish and self-hatred, she pulls off that synthetic skin from her face. And it's the first time that we see her robotic form almost fully revealed, symbolising the tearing away of emotional defences and hinting at the mechanical compulsion that's driving her actions. Now, one, it was a shock, but two, it was powerful. Like, you can interpret that in quite a few different ways. And almost when we then look into season 2 with Demerzel, she has changed character. The things that she does are slightly different. So it's almost like the end of season 1, she's tearing away the old version of her as we brace for the new season. Another key scene is the execution of this rogue brother Dawn in season 1. Now, although this version of Dawn shows signs of individual growth and self-awareness, qualities that Demerzel might recognise and even admire, she executes him without hesitation. Tears silently run down her face. Now, this moment is pivotal because it confirms that despite her, deep internal conflict and emotional pain, she's ultimately bound by a programming that prioritises the continuation of Empire over her personal feelings and moral objections. Now, for me, looking at the three brothers, Dawn, Day and Dusk, I would like to say that Demerzel always has more of a gentle touch with Dawn, considering that, he's still in his infancy of Empire. He's been brought up from a baby. She's spent a lot more time independently with Dawn. And then probably say Dusk towards the end because, the conversations and the way the words flow shift to talk about more philosophical approaches, where then Day obviously is straight to business, he's setting his terms down, it's a little bit of a different relationship. So also I've got to admire Demerzel for, not only protecting Empire at all costs, but almost having three personalities for the three brothers and just seemingly continuing to do her role. Now, in season 2, a standout scene occurs when Brother Day reveals his plan to marry Queen Sareth and end the Cleonic cloning tradition. Demerzel attempts to persuade Day, warning him of the dangers of abandoning the genetic dynasty. But what makes this scene powerful is how subtly it reveals her panic. Not as a political advisor, but being the one who has invested centuries into this system. She can't bear to see that collapse. So she's not just protecting Empire, she's preserving the foundation of her own existence. But of course, Day refuses to relent, and it marks the beginning of this deeper manipulation, showing us how far she's willing to go to preserve what is essential, and, of course, herself. Now, another moment for me is, it's less about what she did and how she did it, I suppose, and it's the back end of season 2, and it's when Demerzel discusses her relationship with the Cleons. She confesses that she both loves them and hates them, and that she has no choice but to maintain their lineage for centuries. Her words reveal a tragic paradox almost. She's a mother, a servant, a warden, and a prisoner all in one. And you know what? It's quite devastating to watch. And, there's many times in the series where your heartstrings pull a little bit just for Demerzel and what she's been through. And I think for me, this is one of those moments where you realise, wow, I'm kind of now rooting for Demerzel. And finally, near the end of season 2, we see her operating at her most calculating and frightening stance yet. So she executes a coordinated plan to neutralise multiple threats to Empire, including manipulating the events around Queen Sareth and orchestrating the outcomes with surgical precision.
I will be required to hunt you down. My programming will mandate it. A new dawn will be decanted, and the public will forget their brief attachment to you.
Now, this cements her, of course, as both the protector and the architect of Empire's survival, and in the end, even brings a new Dawn, Day, and Dusk to life to continue that legacy. Now, we could talk about loads of scenes with Demerzel, to be fair. We've spoken about her face getting ripped off, we've spoken about the death of Dawn, and there's a lot more that I really enjoyed to see visually on screen, like the fact that her head got sliced open and she had to rush Day to get him healed, and her programming just kicked in. She wasn't even worried about herself at this moment. Or even the fact that we saw her imprisoned, separated by panes of, glass essentially. That was mental to see on the screen. She's been attacked, she's been pushed around, she's had to kill Halima, And even the protection of Day in episode 8 of season 2, where she dived onto the floor, throwing her own life in the course of danger to protect Empire. And then we get the nice, subtle details. Like I said, the conversations that she has with Dusk, the upbringing of Dawn, and even, you could throw in the sex with Day. Why not? But ultimately, Demerzel for me is one of those characters that really does make you think and question. She, like I said, she has that underlying programming that forces her to do what she needs to do for Empire. But yet she has that initial base code to protect humanity at all costs. So when those two conflict with each other, she then has to start processing like a supercomputer, like this Prime Radiant, because technically they're not far off. They're both striving for what's best for humanity. But obviously when there's conflict, that's when there's a difference. Now, talking about the Prime Radiant for a second and Demerzel, what are our thoughts on Season 3? Is she going to be using this for a more sadistic approach, an evil touch? Or is she going to work with it and almost take the coding and everything that comes with that Prime Radiant into herself and ultimately push out that barbaric, coding to protect Empire at all costs, and actually then go through with a protecting humanity at all costs? Now, wild theory, what if she does that and actually then ends up having to kill Day herself? Who knows? Or does she think that the Galactic and, especially the Cleonic dynasty is something that needs to survive for the protection of humanity? Do we need that rule overall to ensure that we don't go to war with ourselves? There's so many different variables and so many different ways that Demerzel's character can go through to. But for me, she is one of the number one up there, along with Hari and the Cleons, because there's just so much to pull away from her. And obviously with the snippet in season 3 about her having the skull of another robot, I really do hope that we dive into the backstory of Demerzel, because again, as I've already said, she is one of such complexity that we need to see this slowly unravelled. And like an onion, we need to see those layers of Demerzel peel away. So over to you guys. Let me know your thoughts on Demerzel. What are some of your favourite scenes that you've loved from season 1 and season 2? And of course, what are you looking forward to for season 3? So as always, please do hit that subscribe button, as it really does help the channel to grow. And yeah, I'll catch you next time with something new.